I've played D&D almost my entire life, from the time I was 6 years old to now. And over the years, my experience has changed a lot from being a normal player to being a dungeon master now. When I was younger, I mainly played a dwarf fighter. I always loved the dwarves in Dungeons and Dragons as they're really unique in their lore and how everything works behind them. But after some time, I wanted to be the dungeon master. And I can honestly say that was probably one of the best decisions of my entire life. And you might be asking what I mean by that. Well, being the dungeon master, I started out as kind of any other dungeon master you could think of. You give out free loot, you just spam everybody because you're like, this stuff is so cool. I remember when I first started my dad through our first dungeons, I would give him a horn that would summon a fire giant to fight for him. I gave him a horn that would summon goblins to fight for him. I gave him infinite riches. I would allow him to re-roll dice even though I shouldn't have. There was just so much leniency that I really had, and I loved it so much because it also meant I could make everything 10 times harder. So the chaos was always crazy. Imagine you're playing a game and I hand you a bow that does 8 billion damage, but then you still can barely kill the boss because the boss has 50 billion health. So I would do that a lot, and that really shaped my experience as a DM because over the years, we've implemented more people into the group, friends especially, and I remember when we first implemented my first friend into the group, I had to scale him to my dad, and that was miserable. One player kind of being OP doesn't really matter, especially when it's one-on-one with the DM, because you can just make gods and it's whatever. But when you're getting double tag team from the back by two players, it gets very, very difficult to really DM that. It gets so chaotic that your monsters that used to work just get one-shotted by both of them because they usually go first as the players. And then over the years, obviously, we've changed editions and we've introduced more people, especially as a lot of my friends have gotten out of the military. So what we started with personally was Advanced Edition, which Advanced Edition, if you haven't played it before, is the most simplistic role-playing game of all time. Advanced Edition is what do you do on your turn? Do you want to A, move, B, swing your sword, or C, do nothing? And that's kind of what your turn is, so there's not a lot behind Advanced Edition. But I remember when 5th edition started getting popular and we started watching Critical Role a lot, which helped me form a little bit more of my DMing personality, as I was kind of irritated that they kept one-shotting all of my creatures, so I want to figure out how to become a better DM, and that's when it all began. That's when I started writing very in-depth stories. And that's when the storytelling began in my life. And that's when I started being able to personify my personality and my voice and kind of make it more pizzazz for anybody who needed to be entertained in that D&D session. And I remember there were so many times where I would still do high-end scaling. I mean, I was playing with 6, 7, 8 players, and I would be like, yeah, this boss has 800,000 health. Good luck. You are going to have to fight this guy for 3 hours straight. And they would. And it was so enjoyable and so much fun. And I think that's just something that a lot of DMs go away from, is they're like, well, why would we make our characters gods and they just stop at level 10? Although I love that aspect. I'm not saying that I don't love the beginning. It's just, in Advanced Edition, it's more fun to play at a very, very high tier than to really play at a low level. And then we switched over to 5th edition, officially. And when we switched over to 5th edition, man, I got rocked. Like, it was rough for me because I didn't realize in 5th edition how much the game kind of holds the player's hands, and the players have such a high advantage if you don't put in the effort to kind of balance it 100% properly, which makes it more fun as a overall for everybody, but it makes it where the lower end levels are more entertaining. That's why you don't see a lot of campaigns go above level 12 or go above level 14, is because once they're above that point, they're on par with demigods and gods of the campaign or the setting that you're really playing in. Where back when we were playing advanced, you could be level 20 and you're still kind of just a normal Kai with some magic items, and you might be able to one-shot a dragon, and like that's about it, but you still gotta fight for your life. So it was a very hard wall to overcome, and what I did personally is I decided, okay, let me hunker down, let me figure stats out, let me see what I can do. And I still homebrewed it, I still let people be overpowered because I think it's fun. It is so much fun when people get to be overpowered without having to know a meta of the game. Once you get into like, oh, I'm playing the meta in D&D, you're either at a point where that's the only thing you enjoy in the game, or you're at a point where that's very, very boring for you. So I was like, how can I make homebrew stuff where you can be overpowered, but I can equally be overpowered as the DM and still enjoy myself? So I remember my dad, he would play a monk, he's played a rogue, and he's played a ranger. And my dad is a very good D&D player. He reads the rules, he understands them very well. He's not like mid-maxing, he just understands what's happening in the game and plays very well, you know? So with that, I had to learn how to balance around him, and I remember the first time he played a monk and he stun locked one of my guys just out of rotation for what was like 10 turns, which at IRL was probably like an hour-long fight, you know, of everybody's spells and everything. I'm like, man, I really gotta counter this. But I realized that made it more fun as the Dungeon Master, you know, as the Dungeon Master, having to be like, wow, these guys are overpowered. They are borderline demigods in this game. How can I do something that would make it fun for them, but kind of counters their abilities? Now, I don't like, as a DM, personally countering your abilities just to counter you, because I think that's kind of cringe. But what I more so mean is like, okay, if you're gonna stunning strike me every single round, maybe I'll let my enemies start being a little bit more intelligent, and because I'm making them more intelligent, they have a higher wisdom, higher intelligence, giving them a higher chance to save against that stunning strike or against a spell or something of that sort. And that's where the game gets very complex, but you can make such a intriguing and beautiful story. And when your players add on to that story to another level, whether they're doing voices, which not everybody needs to do a voice, or they just have a very interesting character that adds into it, it's just so, so nice. You know, like my dad, he doesn't do any voices, but like I said, he knows how to play his characters very well. So he's a really good player. Where there's other players I have that maybe they don't know how to play so well, but how they love playing the game is doing an interesting voice and kind of role-playing their character out. And I love putting them in a group together, because there's like that slight tension, you know, like, wow, we are really wasting time. But as a DM, I love it. I love what players consider wasting time, I guess you could say, because when you're wasting time, you are making the most entertaining story in D&D. So is it really a waste of time, or are you just really just playing the game? And that's the question that a lot of people get wrong. I will say the reason I love DMing, though, is because it brought out the storyteller in me. It made it to where I could tell a story without stuttering when I really want to. It made it where I could tell a story that was entertaining, and I could do voices, and I could kind of do creepy tones, and it's just there's such a love behind it for the game as an overall. Now, do I get tired of playing D&D? Yeah, everybody does every once in a while. But no matter what, if I get tired of it, I will always come back to being a dungeon master, because being a dungeon master for me is 10 times better than being a player. And that's the big thing if you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, or you are playing Dungeons and Dragons, that I would say you should figure out for yourself. Do you want to be the player, or do you want to be the dungeon master? Because there's genuinely so much depth in both, but both are very, very, very different. The dungeon master is usually someone who likes to play the devil's advocate, can tell a good story, and can really bring out the depth in the world, where the player is usually someone who will make a character and they know they can be that character to their best ability without having to worry about 50 bazillion other things. But I really just want to share my thoughts about D&D today, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to see maybe some D&D stories in the future, let me know in the comments below. Besides that, I hope you guys enjoyed my little rant. Have a wonderful night. Peace.